Good afternoon, GRRA members, and happy Friday. It's almost October, which is so hard to believe. But this is the third edition of our association podcast, Real Talk, that we're hosting today. GRRA CEO Mike Barr, GRRA President Sophia Crisp, and myself, Aiden Jensen, the Director of Communications and Marketing. We are proud to have a very special guest on today's third episode, Greensboro Mayor Nancy Vaughan. Nancy, hope you're doing well today.
I am. Thank you. It is a pleasure to be here.
So I will kick it off and say welcome. You have been a public servant on and off for over 20 years. How has your view of development changed during that time?
I would have to say that it's changed pretty significantly, especially since I kind of cut my teeth on a neighborhood issue, which was against some very large rezonings. Now looking at having to balance economic development and quality of life, I would say that my view has evolved over the 20 years.
Which leads me to my next question. What decisions have you made during your tenure that proved to be a catalyst towards the growth we're seeing right now?
I would say it was the commitment to infrastructure that we had. Building water and sewer and streets, that's not necessarily sexy. You don't see it coming vertical out of the ground. But without the water and sewer, we would not have had the Toyota announcement. Without water and sewer, you would not have the development that we're having out at the airport. So for years, when it looked like we weren't doing anything, we were literally laying the groundwork for those wonderful announcements.
That's great, because my next question had to do with infrastructure, water and sewer. So you started that off, but how are you going to keep up with the demands being placed on us to specifically address housing, which will be needed for the growth that is coming?
So we are talking about that now. What kind of changes are we going to make to our water and sewer? Are we going to be a utility for the county? And that is a discussion that we're having with the county. Years ago, we had said that if you incorporated, then you were no longer eligible to get water or sewer from the city of Greensboro unless it was for a public health. If wells started to fail or septic systems, then we would come in and help. We've had some of those incorporated towns reach out to us, and so we are looking at that policy and how we could possibly change it. It would take a long time for us to make the money back in water and sewer fees. Is there, some revenue sharing? Will the county help? Who's going to pay for the water and sewer pipes? Those are really big questions. But I think that I would say within the next 6 months, we'll probably know what that looks like. And it's important to try to get it done as soon as possible, because we know that there are people who want to develop along that 421 corridor. That's where a lot of housing, that's where you've got a lot of vacant land. What will our commitment to that area be?
Great. So speaking of growth, you've heard of the acronyms NIMBY and CAVE. How do you overcome those members of the public on infill development, especially when you have a good, sound project in front of you?
So infill development is the one that's most likely to fill up a council chamber. And I had a developer tell me that if it was an easy spot, it's been developed already. So he was absolutely right. The places that we're looking now, by and large, are infill. And I think as a council, we do a really good job balancing private property rights on both sides of the developer and expectations of the neighborhood. We have yet to have a neighborhood come back to us and say, our neighborhood was destroyed just like we said it would be. And I think that's important. Those are difficult decisions, but we know that we need to grow. We are in a housing crisis at every single price point. I'm sure whoever is listening to this podcast knows that we need houses across the board. So even when we're looking at building more expensive homes, it kind of frees up those downstream homes that people who, could afford $500,000 homes, but if they're not there, they'll buy a $300,000 home. So we need them at all price points. I like to talk about attainable housing, not necessarily affordable, because that in people's minds goes for low income, which we absolutely need, but attainable at every single price point.
And I agree with you. And before I turn it over to Mike, I agree with you because attainable is a much better word, because we're talking about teachers, firefighters, EMTs that are not low-income jobs.
Correct.
But they're just working-class people who want to be able to obtain a house.
Which is why I was very excited about the Community Heroes program with the down payment assistance. We do want to help people with workforce housing, especially the people who live and work in our city and the county. And we did, we're able to help teachers. You know, normally we would not fund county employees, but we decided that this was more important than who works for who. It's just that they're part of our county.
Absolutely.
And they're probably residents, could be
Yes.
potential residents of Greensboro. That's great. Well, Mayor Vaughan, thanks for stopping by today. You know, our members are always concerned about crime.
Yes.
Can you talk about what the council and the police department's doing differently on crime than you've done in the past to focus on that?
So we've done a few things. One is that we've opened an Office of Community Safety, and they are working out in the community. We are not going to police our way out of this situation. So we are engaging community members to really help us change the culture. But to the point with police, they have had significant raises over the years. This last year, they are up to $55,000, which I think makes us second when it comes to police pay. And at the end of the academy, they would get a 4% raise. And then there are all different add-ons that if they are bilingual, they could get more money. If they're a veteran, if they want to work third shift, there's third shift differential pay, different pay based on attainment of education. So we really fought hard to get those raises. We also did a take-home car program. When most of our surrounding communities have a take-home car program, we didn't. It'll be phased in over 5 years. We are entering our third year, which would allow police officers to actually have a mobile office. And every time they're at the end of a shift, they don't have to break the car down, which could take up to an hour to do. So it will make them more efficient. And then the other thing that we did with the legislature was last year we asked for, and this was a suggestion by former Police Chief Brian James and at the time Deputy Police Chief John Thompson, who is now our police chief, for traffic investigators, civilian traffic investigators. How often do you drive by an accident and see 3 police cars there directing traffic and doing other things? The first year we brought it to the legislature, it went through the House and got stuck in the Senate. The Senate viewed this as a defund the police issue, which was really ironic since the Police Chiefs Association, the PBA, they all supported it. Well, this year, it did make it through the legislature. We are very appreciative, and they did it statewide. So we are finding ways to deploy police officers to more high priority calls. And also we have the behavioral response team where there are clinical social workers who can go out and assist people who are having a mental health crisis or a physical crisis. That's not what our police are actually there to do. They are not social workers. So as a city, we have employed social workers to help them with that issue.
And of course, none of that had any impact on the budget.
Yeah, it had a big impact. Yes.
Right, and so thus, in order to do that, we had to increase property taxes.
So we've had 2 significant property tax increases, which I voted against both of them. Not because of the great things that were in the budget. There are really good things in the budget, but I felt with the reevaluation, and I think this audience will understand how big that reevaluation was, and that we could have looked at a revenue neutral and brought the tax rate down. We did bring it down a little bit, but I felt it was kind of piggish to take as much of that increase as we could. I thought it should have been a few cents less. And then this year to go out for another 4 cents. We work hard. Being on city council is not easy. But when we look at a budget, we don't know all the ins and outs and where the money is hidden. And I believe that there is fat in the budget. And it was for that reason that I couldn't vote for the budget.
Great. So what are the biggest assets in Greensboro that realtors should highlight to new incoming prospective buyers?
So we have so many great amenities. The Greensboro Science Center is absolutely wonderful. Years ago, you could be in and out in a couple hours. Now you can spend the whole weekend there. And it is good for all ages. Of course, the Tanger Performing Arts Center, it is full over 250 nights a year. It has really been a huge boom to the city of Greensboro. Our great parks and trails, we twice have gotten the gold medal for the National Parks Association with all of the wonderful amenities. The loop downtown will finally be finished. We Phase 4, which is that last mile, we let the contract for at our last city council meeting. So we have we are an amenity-rich city for the size that we are. The Coliseum, they have over 1,100 events every year. Some of them are in the arena. We've had wonderful concerts. Last weekend, we had professional bull riders, but all of the things that go on in the Special Events Center, if you are bored, that's kind of your problem. Because there are great things you can do. The Hoppers baseball games, you can go downtown and get on the trolley and visit all of our stores and restaurants, and there's a lot to do in this city.
So let's talk real quick about town-gown relations. So A&T is obviously one of the crown jewels of the city as well, right? With the new engineering school, is there any effort to bring some of those engineering firms, research firms to the city so that they're around A&T, so that we don't have the brain drain to Atlanta and Fairfax?
So we are, that is something that we are very conscious of. We have really great higher education institutions. We are fortunate to have 7 within Guilford County, and they all bring something great. Love A&T. Last week, they unveiled their autonomous shuttle in downtown Greensboro. They do graduate world-class engineers. Some of them stay on and they do work down at Gateway Research Park, and what they're doing in that research institute is amazing. We know that there is the brain drain to other communities, and we are doing our best to attract companies that need those types of skills. The Pro Kidney announcement recently was a big one, almost $500 million. It's interesting. It's almost like people don't hear these announcements anymore because they are coming month after month after month. So Pro Kidney, they are a biotech. We're not known for biotech, but hopefully that our graduates will be able to fill those jobs.
Okay, so let's talk about UNCG. Drop in enrollment, 11%. Any concerns there with the demographics that are going to be coming out for those college-age students and the impact it may have on the colleges in the area? Have you?
So I believe that UNCG did have an increase in their enrollment this year, in this last, okay. And I know that they are doing their best to attract students from all over. The UNCG campus is the most diverse through the UNC system, and it is a good microcosm of what our community looks like. And there are some really great people who graduate from UNCG, and just like A&T, we hope that they'll call Greensboro home.
Mayor Vaughan, how has the discourse changed during your tenure on council, with both the council members themselves and the Greensboro residents that you serve?
It's kind of unfortunate, and I think it has been a shift over time, that even though we are a nonpartisan board, I think just the rancor with with elected officials and the community has really deteriorated. And I think it goes back to the creation of CNN and Fox News, that from then on, things I think have started spiraling downward. We are a nonpartisan board, and I like that because I think all 9 of us get along well together. We know that we're not going to agree on everything, and sometimes we have to agree to disagree, but at least partisan politics don't play a role in our decisions. And I don't think being on a city council and even a county commissioner, that it doesn't have to be partisan. I mean, parks are not partisan. Water and sewer, these are all just basic things. Police, fire, libraries. We shouldn't break them down along partisan lines. But I'll tell you, some of the emails that we get are really concerning. And some of the speakers we've had some issues with, but we're working together to move the city forward, and I think you've seen that over the last few years.
And I haven't. Just off of that, before I get into my next question, why is it so helpful to have a council that gets along so well and that tries to, set, maybe their personal opinions aside? And how does that help grow the city of Greensboro, if you think at all?
Well, I think the main thing is that people on our council aren't holding a vote hostage. Like, I'll vote for this if you'll vote for this. Or we really take every item by itself and vote the way that we think we should vote. And I think that's important. We all have very different roles. You've got district people, at-large people, and then the mayor. And, we listen to the district people because they are typically closer to a specific neighborhood or an issue. And then we make our own decisions.
Awesome. And off of that, Mayor Vaughan, this a couple more questions. If you could have a do-over on any of the issues you've dealt with on council, what would those be?
There's probably more than one. Maybe what I would say in retrospect is I might have looked at the loose leaf collection a little differently. But, it's funny. I do speak to, I've spoken for a number of local groups, and at the end we always do Q&A. No one's brought up loose leaf collection. I thought that's kind of interesting. But one of the biggest issues that I had with loose leaf really wasn't the financial impact. It was that the program wasn't being done right, that people were supposed to bring leaves to the curb, and often they were in the street. Everybody knows what it's like for 3 months driving down a street and they become one lanes. And I was concerned about people that we have walking their dogs and young kids outside, that they're walking in the streets, and when it's rained, the leaves get very slick. They go down the stormwater. People put the leaves over the grate, and then that contributes to flooding. So there were just so many issues. I think had I been able to do it again, what I would have pushed for would be fining the people who are doing it wrong. Keep the program, but fine the people who are not going by the rules. But I know it's going to be a big adjustment for people. So that is just the most recent do-over.
Well, and just we'll end with this. We'll wrap up this question, Mayor Vaughan. What, in your mind, sets the city of Greensboro apart from the rest of North Carolina? And off of that, what message would you like to send to our members as we wrap up this edition of Real Talk?
So we are the 3rd largest city in North Carolina, one of the fastest growing states. But we do still have that small town feel. I think people don't often realize how big we are as a city. We are 135 square miles. That is a big landmass. But it does still have that small town feel, that Southern hospitality. And while we continue to grow, I wouldn't want us to get disconnected like people are in Charlotte or Raleigh. We don't want to be Charlotte, or Raleigh. We want to be the very best Greensboro that we can be. We want to attract jobs that raise the per capita income, that let people really enjoy a good quality of life. And I think that as long as we continue to move in that direction, we're going to be okay.
I completely agree with you, Mayor Vaughan. Mike, Sophia, Mayor Vaughan, any final thoughts before we close up?
Well, speaking of growth, I'm always appreciative that you can get anywhere you want to in Greensboro in 20 minutes.
Yes.
Or less.
And the opening of the urban loop, when I first moved here back in '89, it was called Painter Boulevard. And, it has taken that long, but now to see all the traffic diverted onto the loop is really good, and the economic development that it opens up for our community.
I second Sophia, like getting home, not having to go to the 4085 merger. I can avoid all that and go on the north end of the loop. So, Mike, you got any final thoughts?
Well, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah.
Thank
We
you. This was
appreciate- I know
fun.
your time is valuable, and
Thank you.
we appreciate having you.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you again, Mayor Vaughan. Members, thank you so much for tuning in today. We hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time.